Some of the hardest problems in the world exist far above the planet. Our job? To launch the smartest solutions, to protect our satellites, clean up our clutter, to propel breakthroughs in propulsion, to learn more about our place in the universe, to outpace emerging threats. Every day, the Aerospace Corporation uses the latest technologies to ensure our nation's safety and leadership in space.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our 2022 Careers in Aerospace panel. I'm so thrilled to be here with all these incredible people from the Aerospace Corporation. I am the director of the UNM STEM-H Center, and this recording is initially part of our 2022 Central New Mexico STEM Research Challenge programming, but it will also be available on an ongoing basis on our YouTube channel. So we hope you find it interesting. I'm going to introduce Mark Jelonic, who is our moderator for the panel today. And Mark's going to start off the group with our introductions, and then he'll pass it around to the rest of the panelists, and then we'll start the conversation. Mark.
Karen, thank you for inviting the Aerospace Corporation to participate in this panel today. I'm pleased to have a group of 6 young, enthusiastic, and very experienced engineers to share some of their career challenges and experiences and their journey in the STEM field. So I'll start. Mark Jelonic. I'm living here in New Mexico, but this is not my first time in Albuquerque. I was stationed here as a fairly young captain almost 30 years ago. I retired from the Air Force and joined the Aerospace Corporation. And my previous boss said, "Hey, how would you like to go back to New Mexico?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been there before. I think I'd like to do it again." And so I came out here, and I've been here a little bit over 4 years now. My education is pretty varied, and you will find from this panel that there's quite a stack of degrees that people have. I got my bachelor's at the Penn State University in Pennsylvania. I've got 3 master's degrees, and I got a PhD in laser physics from the Air Force Institute of Technology. The Air Force paid for that, and that's why I ended up out here in New Mexico the first time. I had to pay back by doing laser physics by coming out here and working for what was then the Air Force Weapons Lab. It is now the Air Force Research Lab, but it's gone through some name changes over the years. And so I'm happy to be moderating this panel. Some of the people on this team work in my organization, and some are from other organizations around aerospace. And so I think the panel will have a nice variety of perspectives of both local New Mexicans and people who have no association with New Mexico at all. So first, let me kick it off with Furkan Chirag. He is a born and raised New Mexican native, and so he's not living here now, but he's from here and would like to come back. So let me start with him.
All right, well, thank you, Mark. Again, my name is Furkan Chirag. I was born and raised in Albuquerque, product of APS, so Albuquerque Public Schools. After I graduated high school, I ended up going down south to Socorro, New Mexico, where I got a bachelor's in electrical engineering with minors in math and history from New Mexico Tech. And then I made my way back up to Albuquerque. So I went to UNM for my master's, and I did electrical engineering with a concentration in optoelectronics. And kind of like Mark was saying, I ended up from there starting to work at AFRL, the Air Force Research Labs, doing kind of laser weapons. And then I got a really cool opportunity to come out to Greenbelt, Maryland to support NASA Goddard. And I spent about 8 years there. And during that time, I also did my MBA from the University of Maryland. Currently, I am a senior project engineer in Aerospace's National Systems Group in their Advanced Technology Division. A couple of things that I've found really interesting in my field is that teamwork is key. I've been able to work on 2 flight projects, and in those flight projects, we got to get our hands dirty and torque screws and build actual space hardware. But then I also realized I have an optical background, but I've been working with thermal people, mechanical people, harnessing people in order to make this entire system come together. So that was really eye-opening and kind of showed me that engineering is just not one small niche, but in order to build such a large system, you have to get so many different groups together and so many different experts together. And if you don't know the answer, there's probably somebody there that knows the answer, and they're always more than willing to reach out to you and help you and answer anything that you have, any questions you have. Also, I've kind of pivoted. So now I'm in a project engineering role. So I'm not necessarily in the lab anymore. So your degree doesn't really kind of hunker you down or pigeonhole you into one certain area. There's so many things you can do outside of school. And I'm sure many of us are doing parts of science, engineering, STEM, healthcare, that's not necessarily what our training or our education was, but we can still apply those concepts in the new sphere and be able to bring value to the table. The three words that I would use to describe my journey would be exciting, blessed, and engaging. So as long as you have the ability to keep on trying to learn what you don't know what you don't know, and also realize that there are things that you don't know, and willing to pick those up, you will be successful. Back to you, Mark.
I appreciate that. Let's go coast to coast, somebody who's not a native of New Mexico. Lisa, you're up next. You're originally from Maryland, I think, but now living in California.
Hey, my name's Lisa Sedaris. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm from Arizona actually, and I worked 10 years at NASA Goddard, and now I'm working with Aerospace Corporation on the West Coast in the Pasadena area. And I apologize, my dog is eating right now. Pick the right moment to eat his food. Okay, so I have dual undergraduate degrees in astronautical engineering and electrical engineering. And then I went and got a master's in piano performance and a master's in space systems engineering. And now I'm working on an MBA. So I'm like all over the place, and I'll probably talk a little bit later about how, like, you know, there's like the STEAM versus STEM and like all the arts and engineering and how those things tie together. But I've really found that I like both, and I'm not going to choose. So that's my life. I've been in aerospace for about 3 years. I'm working on integration and test of the JPSS-2 satellite and part of the Advanced Technology Microwave Sounder payload. So that's what I've been doing for the last couple of years. The most fascinating thing on my job or in my field, I think the best part, and probably other people will probably agree with me, is the anomalies, which I know you don't want to have anomalies. They're bad things, but because you want your spacecraft to be safe, but you also low-key look forward to them because they're really exciting. So, you know, one of my favorite things that I got to learn was this anomaly where we had a solar array flapping, basically is what they called it, after we had a drag makeup or delta V maneuver. And, you know, it's just one of those things where everybody in the room had no idea what was going on. And the spacecraft telemetry was telling us that it was moving all around like crazy. And we had to basically take the whole day to figure out what was going on, how to fix it, and then like recovering from that. So I think, you know, some of the most interesting stuff you learn are like the accidents. And 3 words I would use to describe my career journey. Zigzag. I feel like I've gone from like launch to ops to science to INT. So like all over the place as far as satellite goes. Growth, I've definitely faced like a lot of like challenges, both with like, you know, like people and like group dynamics and like technical challenges that have made me have to grow really fast, and a lot of like increasing responsibility, which has been fun. And that comes with a little bit of doubt, which always come on the other side, you know, better hopefully for it. And then fulfilling. I would say that everything that I've done is really exciting. I'm never bored, and I always have a sense of accomplishment at the end of something.
Thank you, Lisa. We'll come back to New Mexico, another UNM grad, but not from Albuquerque, from Roswell. Vance, over to you, please.
Thank you, Mark. My name is Vance Ois. I actually started in biology, so my BS is in bio from UNM. I then kind of went and worked a couple of industry jobs and then transitioned over to the Air Force for operational test. And for about 5 or 6 years, I was working there. Eventually got a master's in industrial engineering, which is kind of applied math. And then while I was there, I started working on a PhD in biomedical engineering that work ended up taking me away from Albuquerque. So I just ended up with my advisor getting basically a master's out of it, which was quite nice. Most fascinating. And my role within aerospace is as a basically a systems engineer or as a staff engineer, essentially mostly focused on cybersecurity and virtual infrastructure. The most fascinating, interesting things I've learned about in my field in cyber, the thing that interests me the most is actually cryptography, which is essentially the process of changing bits in a predictable manner, or a manner that's predictable but not from someone on the outside, so that you can basically keep your data secure. That was a kind of a passion project that I worked on for about a year and a half. And since then I've moved on, and I'm actually now working with some people in advanced physics modeling with national labs. And so I guess my I find everything really fascinating in my field, because you're kind of always, especially once you get to that point in engineering, you're always kind of at the bleeding edge, trying to push the envelope and trying to build new things that no one has had a chance to before. And 3 words that I use to describe my journey, I guess a lot like Lisa, I feel like I've been kind of a giant zigzag, but it's also been extremely rewarding. I found challenging. Every time I seem to jump to a new thing, like I did integration engineering with the Navy. I did some additional testing with the Navy in a different group. It's always been really challenging, but always amazing and rewarding once I really got some momentum built up behind me. And then I guess the last word is just amazing. I've really loved the work that I've been able to do with the government. And I continue loving to do the work that I do for aerospace for the government.
Thank you, Vance. Let's go to somebody from the Northern Tier, Vanessa Murray. She's got a PhD in what I think is probably the most difficult STEM degree there is, physical chemistry. So Vanessa, over to you.
Hi, yeah, physical chemistry. Too complicated to be physics, too simple to be chemistry. That's kind of where we lie. And so I got there in a very convoluted way. So I grew up in Craig, Colorado, and then wound up moving to Bozeman, Montana State University. And I started in chemical engineering. So I got a bachelor's in chemistry. I was one of those people that had a really difficult time choosing what I wanted to do. So I chose nothing, and then got grabbed to do this graduate program. So most people don't fall into their graduate work. I definitely did, and then got lucky in that I had an experiment that worked, which is rare in experimental anything. So I wrapped up my PhD in, I'd call it chemical reaction dynamics. I worked on heat shields for rockets, understanding how they ablate during atmospheric reentry. And then wound up doing a postdoc in Italy, because when somebody says, do you want to go live in Italy for a year? Your answer isn't no. So while I was over there, I had plans to go and continue my studies in Germany, and kind of had a change of heart and realized I didn't want to go into academia and I wanted to try something else. So I wound up doing a second postdoc at the Air Force Research Lab right as COVID hit. So there was a lot of soul searching in terms of, do I need to be in the lab all the time? Are there other things I could be doing? Which is what led me to aerospace, because this is a really nice combination of the technical and then also the programmatic. And so now I am a senior member of the technical staff. I think you basically consider me as a project engineer at this point, or a project manager. So I've been doing that for the last couple months. I started in June. And then the most fascinating thing I've learned since I've got here is basically this is all science fiction. These concepts that you're running into are things that I didn't think were possible. So electrical propulsion, for one. I've been working a little bit with NASA, looking at nuclear reactors for their deep space missions. And it's all just kind of mind blowing. Even though the research I was doing was heavily space related, we never, you're doing things at an atomic level, and it's nice to see where that research is pointing to. And then 3 words I'd use to describe my career is, I'm not going to use 3 separate words. I'm going to use a butchered phrase, look, don't leap, or as opposed to look before you leap. I have wound up where I am now basically because I say yes to opportunities without really thinking about them. So if it sounds fun at first, I haven't, whether for better or for worse, I haven't second guessed whether or not I have the skills for them. I just say, it sounds fun, sure, count me in. And now I'm here.
Thank you, Vanessa. Over to Tiara. Tiara went to school next door to New Mexico, but she's not a native New Mexican either. Tiara.
No, I'm not. I grew up in Colorado. Got my bachelor's in astronomy and physics from the University of Arizona. Uh, Thought I was going to work on telescope instrumentation, so I went and grabbed a master's in electrical engineering from Johns Hopkins University, and I graduated right around the time there was a nice little federal hiring freeze, and so my dream of working at NASA was a little bit put on hold. I was eventually able to do work with NASA through Aerospace, but I ended up grabbing a systems engineering job right out of grad school with Aerospace. So I've been with Aerospace my whole career. It's been about 8 years now. And I've gotten to work with a lot of different people at Aerospace, including NASA for about 4 years. And just recently I moved out to Albuquerque from the East Coast. And I'm now the director of the cross-disciplinary engineering office. So I've kind of moved away from the technical a little bit and into bringing in good people, helping people grow their careers, and kind of being an enabler to help the super smart technical folks get their work done where they need to do, where it needs to get done. So I think one of the most interesting things I've run into is how much you can do with a little bit. One of my favorite projects that I ever worked on, I did in college, and it was a long duration balloon mission, which is basically where you strap a telescope to a football field sized balloon, fill it up with helium, and float it around the upper atmosphere for a long time. And we used to call it junkyard wars for space. You didn't really have very much money. You had to do with what you could, and we were still able to do some really amazing science. And that is carried through a lot of my career. Is you can find ways to get things done with whatever resources you have, and you can do a lot of really amazing stuff, even when you don't always have all of the money or time or people that you think you would like. 3 words to describe my career journey: passion. That's really what kicked off my career, was my interest, and it encouraged me to go out and investigate and figure out what education I needed to explore the space stuff that I was so interested in. And then adaptability, being willing to take an opportunity when it shows up, even if it wasn't exactly the opportunity that I thought I wanted, and being happy with just adapting to what's out there, and figuring out what makes me happy, even if it wasn't what I thought was going to make me happy. And then dependability, making myself into the person that someone can come to and know that things will get done, and being willing to step up and be dependable has really opened a lot of doors for me.
Thank you, Tiara. Our anchor panelist is Kyler Daniel. He's another New Mexican native from Raton. Kyler works in my division, and I decided that I wanted to hire him when he told me that he worked on roofs in the summertime in Farmington. And I figured anybody who was willing to do that was willing to do a lot of hard work. So Kyler, over to you.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. So as Mark mentioned, I'm Kyler Daniel. I'm born and raised in New Mexico, originally from Raton, New Mexico. And then after I graduated high school, I went down to the University of New Mexico for my bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering. I finished that up in May of 2020. I was very fortunate to be hired on as an intern with Aerospace Corporation halfway through my undergraduate degree. So I was able to be an intern for 2 years. Thankfully, I was hired on to be full-time following my graduation. But I also decided to pursue a master's degree, and the University of New Mexico was the right fit for me because they had a space systems engineering concentration for Master of Science in Mechanical Engineering that I took advantage of. And I finished that up in December of the last year, 2021. And it was very rewarding to be able to work on that while working full-time for the Aerospace Corporation and supporting the nation and our customers. I'm currently an associate member of the technical staff, working in the multi-payload mission integration department. And so I've gotten to do a lot of cool things. My primary support is to the space test program here in Albuquerque. I think the most fascinating and interesting things about the field really is how easy everybody makes the industry look from the outside. Nowadays, you hear about these satellites or these rocket launches every day, and the person who's not in the industry doesn't understand all of the things that go on behind the scenes to develop the mission, manufacture the parts and everything, and assure that the mission's going to be a success. So having been in the industry, I get to see that side of things, which I think is very interesting. And I really, really like and get passionate about that. 3 words to describe my my career journey so far. It's been short, but fortunate. Working with the Aerospace Corporation has been wonderful and really fit with what I was looking for. It's been interesting. We get to do a lot of cool projects, and in my job, I get to work with a lot of different projects. I'm not stuck in one big long project, and also challenging. And where that really comes in is aerospace is poised to solve the nation's hardest challenges. And so it's challenging in a good way because it helps me grow and learn more. So I've been very enjoying that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kyler. So let's kick off the questions. We've heard a wide variety of career paths and the way that people on the panel have gotten into their careers. But let's go back to the very beginning when you decided that STEM was the kind of thing that you wanted to do for a living. I remember back in the 1970s, the Voyager spacecraft had just gone out to Jupiter and Saturn, and there was a television show on called Cosmos that was hosted by Carl Sagan, and that probably had the single biggest impact on my career choice on what I wanted to do. And I chose physics because physics, you get to learn everything. So Kyler, let me start back with you. So how did you decide that you didn't want to do roofs in Farmington, New Mexico for a living? And why did you want to go into the field of mechanical engineering?
Yeah, so in my when I was in high school, I kind of got the idea of I wanted to support the nation in some way. And I wasn't sure if being part of the military was the role that I wanted to be, or if there was a different supporting role. At the same time, I took a drafting class at my high school, and we started with the paper and the drafting tables and making all these parts or different designs, and we evolved that into using CAD, computer-aided drafting software, and I really enjoyed doing that. So I decided I was like, I'm going to be a mechanical engineer, and as I started in my degree in my undergrad, I really took off with the idea of the aerospace industry. I thought space is really cool, airplanes are really cool, missiles or rockets, anything like that is really cool, and really just all that came together with aerospace and being able to support the nation. And that was when I really solidified, once I saw this internship opportunity, that I really wanted to be in this field, and that's where the passion really came in.
Thank you, Kyler. I like this question because I'm fascinated how people decide to do what they do. And so I'm just going to keep going around the horn here. Lisa, you talked about bringing art and engineering together, and I saw that you have a master's degree in music. So what sparked you? And it seems like your path is a little interesting. So what made you decide to finally go into engineering?
So I have like a little bit of a story time, I guess, with that. So I didn't think of myself as like a good student. As a matter of fact, there were friends of mine that told like whose parents didn't let them hang out with me because they were like, she's such a bad influence kind of situation. So I was like kind of like, I didn't really do my homework. I like ditched a bunch of class. It just wasn't, I don't know, something wasn't sparking there for me. Both my parents are professional musicians, and I had always like done piano, which funny, it like requires a lot of discipline. So I think I don't know, I just didn't really translate discipline to school. So I like ended up in a physics class in my freshman year of high school, and it was at the last class of the day, and I didn't do very well in it, but I really liked the teacher, and he would let me hang out after school and just like, he'd be like finishing up grades or whatever, and I would just kind of hang out, and I think I just wanted somebody to talk to. I didn't like riding the bus, so I was like, I'm just gonna stay here and then figure out how I get home later. So I would hang out there. Sometimes I'd get some help with the whatever I was doing in class, but like about halfway through the year, these other kids started coming in after school, and they were like seniors, and they were part of the robotics team, I found out. And like I had, it's funny, I had like a D in physics at the time. And so like I was kind of like, robotics isn't really for me. I'm not a STEM person. I'm not that smart. I'm not that good at math. So, but I was like, I'll hang out because, it's like a group of 6 guys. And I was like, sure. I was like, watch what they do. I never really helped actually, but I just watched. And then around competition time, there's like 10 spots on the team. There's only 6 people. So my physics teacher asked if I wanted to go to the competition in San Francisco. And I was like, yeah, I do. That would be fun. And like, long story short, when I got there, they were all a little bit annoyed because they're like, who is this person? And then like there was an issue we were having on competition day, and they all took a lunch, and I like was like looking at one of the parts that they were like messing with. And I don't know why I did this, because I was like so bold, and it seems like such a weird risk, but I like took one of the components off the robot and I took it to the machine shop because I was like, there's something wrong with this. Like, I'm just gonna go fix it for them and put it back. And they were so mad at me when they came back and they saw that, but like it was like the right thing to do. And so then it was like I kind of had like an in. And I was like, oh, I didn't think that I was like, smart, but I figured this thing out. Well, that's kind of like encouraging. And basically they were all seniors, so they graduated. I took the team over the next year, and then it all kind of spiraled because we got to go to championships that year. And then I got recruited by a college, and then I went to that college and got a full ride. And then they helped me get my first NASA internship. And so then that's basically how I started at NASA Goddard. So like, if I hadn't had a D in physics, I don't think I would have been where I am right now. And, and I kind of made a deal with myself that I would go get the engineering degree. My parents are very much like, being a musician is hard. There's not a lot of money in it. It's like very political. And so I was like, well, I'll get the engineering degree. I'll go back for music, and then I'll just see where I'm at. And so I kept my deal. And now I'm basically engineer by day, and I run a nonprofit theater company by night. So that's so cool. That's who I am.
Well, thank you, Lisa. I never got a D in physics. I never got a C in physics. I don't know if I would have continued had I gotten a D.
Don't give up on your dreams.
No, I don't need any Ds. I'm done going to classes where I get graded. So Vance, you started out in biology, and now you're doing cool cybersecurity stuff. So somewhere along the way, something sparked you to change. So how did that happen?
Well, so the change to cybersecurity was actually by necessity. In both whenever I worked for the operational test guys for the Air Force, as well as whenever I worked for the Navy, the problem space in cybersecurity is so big. It's not just big, it's varied, and it changes much quicker than most of the other types of threats that you'd be worried about. And so honestly, it was in the case of my work with Afrotech, the ops test guys, that was usually the place that most of our reporting really needed the really fine grained explanation. And so I kind of fell into it there because I was really interested in I guess statistically robust data sets, like big data sets that are really complicated to understand. And so it kind of necessitates you to tell a story. And so there's an elegance to that. So I thought that was kind of cool. Whenever I went to the Navy, I'd done quite a bit of cyber stuff before that, but I became a PM, and oddly enough, again, by necessity, I couldn't afford a cyber guy in San Diego. They were way too expensive. So I became my own cyber guy. So I was the one building all of the cybersecurity engineering tests that were running every night through the software engineering pipeline that we had built out there with the Navy. And so I just kind of fell into it, but it's interesting because the facets of it that really attracted me to it still fascinate me about it. I'm actually at a symposium right now, and I'm getting to talk to some industry experts about this, but it is a continually evolving and infinitely rewarding career set because of the fact that the attack surfaces or that the difficulties with them are so varied and complicated. It's a beautiful space. So math nerd, but that's why I am where I am.
Thank you, Vance. Vanessa, based on the story you told us already, you probably weren't sparked by anything. You flipped open a college catalog and decided you were going to be a chemical engineer.
Close,
so
very close.
Hopefully your story is better than that. What sparked you?
Slightly better than that, but not too much. I am actually happy to hear you say that you were sparked by a TV show, because I was kind of as well. And I felt a little silly for that, but now I see I'm not the only one. My hometown did not have a whole lot of resources. We didn't have like a robotics team, which would have been awesome, and I definitely would have been into that, but there wasn't a lot of resources. It was a very poor school district. And I watched a ton of Discovery Channel. And really what did me in for it was the TV show Mythbusters. Because they basically, it was a scientific process for the commercial like masses. You have a hypothesis, you have a myth, you form a hypothesis, you test it, you draw a conclusion, and there was a lot of zany antics and a lot of explosions, which I liked. And that was kind of what drew me into chemistry. And then you talk to people in my hometown and nobody knows what a chemist does, but they do know what a chemical engineer does. And since I was also good at math, somebody put it in my head, be a chemical engineer. And I'm the type of person who it doesn't really matter what the goal is. It's just that there is a goal. And so I kind of laser focused on that one, and drove my way forward. And then wound up back in chemistry after being in chemical engineering, because I kind of found out that engineering is a lot of computer work and I really liked working with my hands. So now I don't do any of that anymore because I really am just challenge based, and it's not so much any one thing, it's whether or not it's a skill set I don't have, and it's a skill set that I want to figure out. And so that's kind of all what's drawn out of Mythbusters. Have a hypothesis, test it, draw your conclusions, then move on to the next one.
And blow some stuff up along the way.
Yeah, we don't talk about that here.
Yeah, there's a little generational difference here, Vanessa. We didn't have cable, we had antennas, and we got 4 channels. And fortunately, Cosmos was on PBS. But I have watched a lot of Mythbusters when I finally did get cable. Tiara, what sparked you? You wanted to go into astrophysics. That's an unusual career field.
Yeah, that isn't where it really started, though. I kind of started out of petty vindictiveness. When I was in first grade, I had this bully. Her name was Kelly. And we had a guest scientist come in, and he had liquid nitrogen. And he froze a rose and smashed it over my bully's head. And I was like, this is it. Science is cool. This is what I want to do. But then, so that kind of sparked the science is cool. You can do a lot of cool things. You can answer cool questions. And then I ended up going on a field trip to the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, and we watched a IMAX video about the Hubble telescope. And at that point, I was like, space is cool. And after that, it was a done deal. I wanted to learn everything about space. And so I ended up doing Science Olympiad in middle school and competing in some of the astrophysics events. And would read all of the like pop science books that I could get my hands on about planets and stars and string theory and whatever I could find. And then I found like the school that I thought had the best astrophysics program, and I only applied to one college because that was a smart decision, but I got in, so it turned out okay. And the rest is kind of history. So it was all sparked by one guest scientist in the first grade playing with liquid nitrogen.
I finally recall a lot of liquid nitrogen experiments, one of which involved a mousetrap, and we won't go into that.
I need to hear that one. I definitely have also played with a lot of liquid nitrogen, and it is really, really fun to smash botanicals because they shatter and go everywhere.
So Furkan, you're the last one to address this question. What sparked you that got you started in the STEM career field?
So I guess my spark was a little bit different. So being a second generation American, like a child of an immigrant, my dad actually came to UNM to do his PhD and ended up becoming a librarian at a local high school. So we were given 2 options pretty much growing up. It's either you're a doctor or an engineer. And my dad had the resources of as far as having a book on different career paths. And I think it must have been my second semester of senior year of high school, where he turns to me and he asks me, what do you want to major in? And I was like, we're doing circuits in class. It seems cool. And he's like, okay, electrical engineering it is. And that got me down the path. And it was hard. I did pretty bad my first semester because I was going in like, I can do this. And, you know, oh, don't listen to the advisors. They say don't stack chemistry and physics and calculus your first semester. And I was like, yeah, whatever. And I did really bad. I almost lost my scholarship. I had like a 2.5, and I spent the entire my time in college trying to recover from that. And coming out of undergrad, I was just like, I don't know what to do. Electrical engineering is such a broad field, and I have no real job opportunities. And I got one job offer, but then it wasn't really anything I wanted to do. They just told me, hey, you'll be working with satellites. That's all we can say. And I started applying to grad schools, and I got it. I fortunately got into UNM, and also got a NSF fellowship where they pay for school and kind of have me be a supplemental science teacher to local elementary, high school, and middle school students. And it was actually in graduate school where I kind of found my spark. And that was where I ended up majoring in optoelectronics, because I had some friends who were talking about, okay, hey, what do we want to focus on? And I was like, oh, optics seems cool and cutting edge, and electronics seems cool and cutting edge. This seems like a marriage of both fields. And that's where I got into it. And that's where I kind of saw that, hey, you know, fiber optics, LEDs, lasers, these all kind of fall under that same, you know, umbrella of optoelectronics. So it was really cool how you can use the concept of a solar cell to harvest light in order to power different things, or how if you ran a diode a certain way, you can go ahead and make it laser and create lasers that could be used for a variety of different things, whether it's hair removal or shooting down things. You know, it just seemed really cool and cutting edge. And that's where I kind of found my spark, and kind of just made sure I left the door open to whatever came my way. And like I think Vanessa was saying earlier, don't say no to anything. Just kind of like see something, and if you think it sounds cool enough, you'll learn it as you're doing it. So that was kind of how I kind of fell into it. It was more so like the coolness factor of optoelectronics.
Thank you, Furkan. So if you were advising a high school student today that might be considering a STEM career field, what kind of advice would you give to them before they make their decision, or to help them make their decision?
So I would say that STEM is very broad, and there might be aspects that you don't think fall into STEM, and they might actually do. So if you like to, there's one at the university I went to, they had explosives engineering. I liked to play around and like burn things and stuff growing up, but I never knew it could be a career path, right? And so if you really do like something, look around, try to see if there is something there for you to major in, and you can make it your career. The other thing, I guess, would be listen to your advisors. That's one thing I didn't do when I started college. I kind of pushed them to the side, and it made it an uphill battle. But similar to the work field, there are people there to help you if you reach out. No one's going to come to you and help you directly. If you reach out, if you seek those resources, people are more than welcoming to tell you how you can get around a system, whether it's like, you know, needing to register for a class or prereqs for it. But don't be afraid to ask for help. And that would have saved me a whole bunch of time and a lot of long hours of studying if I did that. And the other thing is the process is hard, and it's supposed to be hard, but if you work through the hard process, there's ease at the end. So it's that ease after hardship. That hardship is where you build the skill sets and the abilities in order to make it easier later on.
Thank you. Lisa, let's go back to your days on hanging out with the robot guys. What advice would you give to yourself back then if you had to do it over again?
You know, so I kind of just similar to Furkan, like on electrical engineering, you know, sort of something that I like, okay, that sounds like the right one, but I don't know about you, but I didn't love it. It was really hard, and there were like some cool things about it, but the only reason I chose it was because I was going on college tours and somebody was like, oh, you like robotics? You should do electrical engineering. And I was like, great, I love robotics, I'm gonna go. And then that's completely really bad advice. Like it just really was bad advice. And I took it. So like, I mean, I think, now it's a lot easier to like Google what programs are where. And like, like you can talk to a bunch of people. Like if you go to like panels like this, you can like talk to, engineers and see, or other STEM professionals and see what they do. But like, I don't know. I do love the idea of just like seeing an open door and taking the opportunity. I've done that plenty of times. And it seems like that's kind of a theme of this panel today. But also try to do a little bit of research because, once you're in it, you want to finish it. And, you just make sure I mean, I could have majored in robotics. That's what I would have told myself. Like, I didn't know that you could do that. So like you're saying, you can major in explosives or you can major in whatever it is like that. It's probably out there. So like follow the thread, I guess,
So maybe you could major in explosive robotics.
Would be fun.
Kyler, I won't tease you a whole lot, but I'll tease you a little. High school wasn't that long ago for you. So what advice would you give to somebody who's thinking about a STEM career path? You don't have to think back very far.
Yeah, that's true. I don't. I have a couple of things, and one is find somebody that you look up to. Find somebody who's done what you're thinking about doing. Talk to them, see if they have advice, or like with this panel. For me, I had a neighbor from when I was little, and he was about 5 years older than me, graduated and raised in the same town. And he came to UNM and did mechanical engineering. And so when I started thinking about it, I got in touch with him and I said, hey, I'm looking at the University of New Mexico. I know you're there right now. Would you mind talking to me about your experience and things like that? And it was very good. I went to a class with him just to see what it was like. He gave me kind of a tour, look around the mechanical engineering department and some place on campus, which is a little different perspective getting it from a student than someone who's working at the university or an advisor. And both are great, and I did both. So I think that was really, really encouraging and helpful. And it made me think whenever I was experiencing something challenging, well, he did it. He got through it just fine. He's doing great now. Why can't I do it? And to have confidence in myself that I can accomplish things and keep working. Also, like some of the other panelists have said, don't be afraid to ask questions. And whether that be to your classmates, your advisors, your instructors, industry professionals, anybody. And I think asking questions to your peers or forming study groups is also really good. So don't be afraid to make friends. And I know sometimes it's hard, like coming up to somebody and saying, hey, like we have this class together. What do you think about this? Or could you help me out with that? But you can form some lifelong friendships there that I would really encourage in study groups and things like that. So those were the things that I kind of learned along the way that really helped me.
Thank you, Kyler. Changing up, Vance, I think a lot of people will find cybersecurity and cyber operations really fascinating. What is it that you do in a typical workday? It's probably not at all like what people see on the movies where you hack away at a keyboard and do marvelous things and look in security cameras and rob bank accounts and things like that. So what does a real cybersecurity specialist do in a typical day?
And it does depend on the day, actually. So like there's a lot of threat assessment. There's a lot of talking to people, especially like sysadmins and checking configurations across different networks. And that's more on like the blue teaming side, like the making sure that your network is secure side. From pen testing, actually, there's an interesting thing that I literally learned this week that I thought was kind of clever since I'm here at the symposium. There was a group that I took a training on, and they'd actually used machine learning processes to actually to identify specific viral tendencies, I guess I should say, characteristics. And so what they've done is they took all of the code, all of the ones and zeros, and they converted it into a no-kidding bitmap, a colored bitmap with RGB scaled variables. And so what they did was they trained the machine learning model to look at the picture. So as the bit stream comes in, it was basically filling in this picture. So it taught a machine to go, hey, whenever you see that picture, there's a problem. And it did it in this case, Epics, it did thousands of cycles of actually training. in any event, it really is varied. In my case, a lot of what I do is probably cybersecurity assessment, so risk management framework. But every once in a while, you get to go to these amazing trainings where you see these new development efforts they literally had a toolbox and they weren't quite sure how to solve the problem that they had, but they're like, hey, I can convert this bit stream into a picture, and then I'll use all the good work that people have done on building machine learning tools for picture identification to actually solve my problem. And so anyway, I thought that was a really interesting thing that I got to play around with on Monday for about 8 hours. So, but in general, it's about communication and making sure that the mission can be executed in a secure manner. And so, yeah, I find every conversation that I have rewarding, because at the end of the day, every little problem, I know someone has said something about anomaly resolution, but every little anomaly that I think it was Lisa, resolved, I feel like I've really contributed to the mission and to, the nation, which is our primary customer ultimately.
Thank you, Vance. Now I'm going to tease Vanessa a little bit. Vanessa, what does your typical workday look like? And remember that you do work for me. I'm your general manager, so I will take notes.
I would say that I start by demanding Mark explain things to me on a regular basis. So I would say my regular workday, and I'm going to tease myself now, consists of solving more problems than I cause. So I'm very new at my position. Inevitably, I have made mistakes. I just made a mistake a couple hours ago that I need to go and fix now. So as a project manager, you are a facilitator. So I'm not responsible for doing the work that the project as a whole is supposed to accomplish, but I am responsible for identifying the people who can do the work, listening to them when they tell me that this can't be done or this doesn't make sense, and iterating with them and helping them get the resources that they need to accomplish that. And then making sure, once they have told me this is what I'm going to do, that it does get done. So some of this involves looking 1,000 yards down the road and seeing these are the major bumps in the road that are coming up. I'm going to try to smooth those out to the best of my ability. Meanwhile, putting my own shovel down so I don't dig more bumps up where I'm standing right now. So a lot of my day right now is communicating. So via email, via phone, via text messaging, just lots of communicating. And then, and this is where having a STEM background comes in handy, this is a project, it's a research project that is very technical. And I, at the end of the day, am responsible for either explaining to Mark or our customers what it is that's going on. So I need to be able to understand what people are telling me, what these different, a Stirling engine, what does a Stirling engine do? Why do we not want to use it? So I have that technical background to understand what I am being told. And now I'm developing the soft skills so that I can be this intermediary between the scientists and the engineers and the customer who wants the work done. And I ask Mark for help.
Thanks, Vanessa. And I made a mistake yesterday that I don't get to quit today until I clean it up. So you're not alone on that. Tiara, what does a typical work day look like for you? You work down the hall for me, and every time I go by, you look really busy.
So I don't know if you want to hear what my life as a manager is like, because it's kind of boring. I go to a lot of meetings. So instead, I'm going to deflect and tell you what my life was like before becoming a manager. I can tell you what a day in the life of working at NASA headquarters was like back a couple of years ago. I had the great opportunity to work at NASA headquarters with the Space Technology Mission Directorate, which I don't know if you know, but the headquarters is where a lot of like the bureaucracy happens, where a lot of the policy and decisions are made about how we're going to get back to the moon, where are we going to spend our money, who's going to do what work. And I had the great fortune to be able to do what I call strategic budget planning. And so with my engineering background, my day-to-day job was to work with the engineers and the technology experts and be an intermediary between those folks and the people that were spending money and trying to meet the political goals that the president at the time had. And one of those goals was, how do we get back to the moon by 2024? And so my day-to-day job would be working with all of these technical experts and drawing conclusions. Say the money people said, oh, we really don't have enough money. We only have this pot. What can we do with this money to best reach our goals? And so I would kind of I would go in between. I'd go to all these meetings with the technical folks and with the budget folks and say, well, the money folks are saying they're going to cut you here, but if you cut that here, we won't be able to do this technical thing. And my job was to draw those connections to say, well, if you don't spend money on propulsion, you're not going to be able to get to the moon and then Mars on the timeline you want. So how do we prioritize how we're spending our money? And again, this kind of goes back to being able to do a lot with a little. How do we fill the bucket with work the right way so that we can reach our goals to the best of our abilities? So a lot of that was working with large data sets, keeping track of where all the money's going, how the money's being spent, keeping track of timelines. A lot of what I did was road mapping. So that was, when do things need to happen? How much money do we have available to get those things done? And when things changed with the money, how does that timeline change? How does that change our goals? And I really enjoyed being able to work and to marry technical with policy and political, and be able to kind of influence the trajectory of all of the mission planning that was going on.
Thank you, Tiara. Let me ask another question related to what you just talked about. Many of us have faced some sort of a barrier in our career. You just described that you had policy barriers and funding barriers. So share with us a barrier that you faced and how you overcame that barrier.
Yeah, so a barrier in my career. So one of the things that was really hard for me when I was going to school was I have chronic migraines. And so one of the things that kind of held me back from, I wasn't able to pull all-nighters. I wasn't able to study as frequently as a lot of my colleagues and fellow students were. And on top of that, I also self-funded my own school. So I had to work 30 hours a week in order to pay for my housing and my food. And so what I ended up with was less time to get the work done that I needed to do to get to my career. And that left me with what I felt was a less solid foundational base of knowledge by the time I had my career. I didn't feel as smart as my peers. I didn't feel like I knew enough to go into academia and get a PhD. And I really ended up feeling like I had to be strategic and really plan out what I was able to do with the time that I had. And at one point, I felt like I settled for getting a master's degree, because I felt less about myself and my abilities. But looking back on it, while there were barriers, I was able to navigate them well enough that I am here. I still have a highly successful career. And there were a lot of really great people that helped me out. A lot of really great academic advisors, a lot of great managers helping me plan out my career and get me to where I am. And so I would just say, even if you're feeling like you're not as smart or you don't have as much time in the day as your peers do, that doesn't mean you can't be successful. You might have to be a little bit more strategic about how you spend your time than your peers. But one of the things I've gotten out of that is I am really efficient. And people like it that I can be efficient and get my work done, and still, even with less time. get what needs to be done.
Thank you. Furkan, you used the word blessed. Does that mean that you haven't faced any barriers in your career?
Oh, I've faced some barriers. I said blessed because the fact that I have built something with my hands that's sitting on the ISS right now. So being able to actually build space hardware and see it launch and know that it's up there is why I feel so blessed. But as far as barriers, I think I touched upon one that always sticks out in my head the most is that 2.5 GPA freshman year and trying to dig out of that hole. That was tough. And but I was able to, because of the fact that I leveraged the resources that were available and realized, hey, engineering's hard. It's not going to be perfect, and working your way through it. So that was the one biggest barrier I see. The other ones were kind of more minor as far as kind of just job opportunities due to the economy. When I graduated with my master's degree, the economy was in dip, nobody was hiring. But again, kind of just looking at all open doors, I had the opportunity to continue on working towards a PhD and kind of stayed in that program until I was able to find something. And that's kind of something that I had talked to my advisor about was, I'm really burnt out. I don't want to do a PhD, but I can't find anything else. And that's where my advisor was gracious and kind of said, okay, you're doing good research. Let's keep that going. You can continue on graduate school until you find something else. And that's when I pivoted away from Albuquerque into the East Coast. So kind of not saying no to anything. And when you see something, going after it is how I've kind of gone through my hard times. And also another thing that my father had always told me is that it's always hard to get something, but it's not hard to say no, right? So kind of shoot for the stars, apply to things, keep on trying to get whatever you can, whatever your dreams are. And if it works for you at the time, you can say no if you want to, but getting it initially is the hard part. So kind of don't turn down opportunities just because you think that they're too far out.
Thank you, Furkan. Lisa, was it a barrier to have parents who were musicians rather than engineers when you were trying to figure out what you wanted to do?
I don't think so. I mean, they pushed me really far away from music, honestly. So they almost pushed me into engineering, which was fine. Yeah, I would say, barriers, there have been times when I wanted to give up. A lot of those times, I mean, I talked a little bit about how my freshman year of high school was really not a good grade year for me. And I was digging myself out, and I thought that getting into college was just going to be gone. But I did I turned myself around, and I got into some of those other things, and I tried to push through it. But after graduating and being in the field, even one of my internships, I faced a couple, 98% of the people are great. There's a couple people, 2%, I would say, that are just holdovers from another generation that don't really believe in the people that are there all the time. So one of the barriers I faced was I mean, I think it's getting better all the time, but at the time, some sexism. And, I mean, we've grown a lot. I think in 1970, it was 8% women or women identifying people in the STEM workforce. Now it's 15%. So there's progress, but that's not a ton of progress. We still have a long way to go. And so I don't know, I was really close to leaving, but what I would say is that if you're in a position where you're faced with somebody who tries to hold you back or is not nice to you, don't give up on the industry, but maybe give up on that person and that maybe that position or whatever it is. But you don't have to leave forever, because I think there are really good things out there. There's really good people out there. That's when other people on the panel have been talking about mentorships and managers and a support group like IEEE or the Society of Women Engineers, or all these things that you can try to go to help yourself. I know it's something that I think has been talked about a lot, and there's a lot of reasons why they speculate why that is the way it is. But if you're really passionate about something, don't let somebody ruin it for you, I guess.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to stick with you. You're on a panel with a number of stunningly well-educated aerospace engineers and scientists, and we have the good fortune of working for Aerospace Corporation that encourages continued learning. So what are the most interesting, most fascinating things that you get to learn about and that aerospace encourages you to learn about as part of your normal job?
Ooh, okay. Well, so I talked about how I started my career in operations, and that's really fun because you have to deal with stuff that you can't see. But one of the really cool things about Aerospace Corp is that a lot of our work is hands-on. So I know, there is some PowerPoint engineering involved. I would say like 50% of my day, I'm like either in meetings or I'm like watching other people present things or doing whatever. But there is a super hands-on element to Aerospace Corp and a way to get involved in like a whole different amount of things that you might want to do. And so like, for me, where I work now is like watching the instrument get built and the spacecraft get built that I was operating the predecessor to, basically. And so like I studied about it, like I knew all the things in and out. Like for one example is that the ATMS, Advanced Microwave Technology Sounder, rotates like based on the view it's looking at. So it goes through like the space view, or so the Earth view really slow, and then it like zips over to space view and zips over to the calibration and then zips back to Earth and goes slow again. And like logically, I knew that. But then the first time I saw it rotate in person, I was like, oh my God, it's like working exactly as it's designed. That's so freaking cool. And it's just like that like moment that you get to like actually see something happening. So I'd say like aerospace really encourages that. Aerospace is also really cool because they have like a certain amount of training hours that like you're encouraged to take classes at the Aerospace University. You can also use those hours to volunteer. So for a while, I was using those hours to volunteer at the first robotics competition. I was a head referee for a lot of years, which is sort of like my giving back to all the things that I think robotics gave to me. So I think like aerospace really encourages you to do a lot of these other things. And to tie it all together, we also have employee resource like type groups. Like there's like a sort of women's focused group at Aerospace. There's also the Asian American Pacific Islander group at Aerospace. And so there's communities built into our community to help us do these things and to continue learning and stuff. So I really, Aerospace is like the best. I love it. I love working for them, us, whatever.
Thank you. Glad to hear that. I think aerospace is a great place to work as well. But Vance, you just shared with us something really exciting that you learned in the conference that you're attending now. What other cool things have you been able to learn while you're working for aerospace?
Actually, I have one more thing that I learned in the conference that so whenever I was working for the Navy a couple of years ago, we were trying this new thing. Basically, it's not really that new, but containerized services. It was a big push for us. We were the first ones to try to actually implement it on a limited scale, and we actually ended up having to walk back, going to that advanced capability, and implementing it in something called virtual machines, which is a little bit simpler. It's a different sort of setup. But the point is, I wasn't aware that there was any company that existed that built basically customized scanning tools for the software bill of materials that's made for deployment on, in this case, it was Kubernetes, which is a type of containerization software. It turns out that there was a company that I met yesterday that does this, and this didn't exist in 2020 because I and several of my civilian Navy guys actually looked for a company that did this. I'm constantly learning just the most clever ways of approaching and fixing problems, and that's one of the coolest things about. I mean, it's generally cool about any STEM career field because you're always kind of pushing the envelope. But in cybersecurity, it's really interesting because again, everything is frenetic. It's a very energetic environment. And so yeah, but in general, other things that I get to do or learn about in the field, I really do like looking into developmental architectures and system architectures, especially with newer software programs and stacks as they come along. You can check it every day and still find something new. It's just such an amazing field.
Thank you, Vance. Your joy in learning new things comes across in your description. So thank you. Kyler, you've pretty much been going to school nonstop. You probably don't want to do any more learning for the moment and take a little time to relax, but aerospace has put you into a new job and wants you to keep learning. So what are the cool things that you get to learn?
I think just the ways that you can learn in aerospace are abundant. And one of the things for me being new to the industry is relying on my peers to teach me things. And that's with interesting and cool concepts or ideas, as well as in like ways that I can present myself or how I can work most efficiently and effectively. And so I'm really relying on my peers and the experts that they are, with aerospace having experts in every kind of everything that involves space. There's someone here that knows exactly what they're doing, keeps up with that field, and is able to tell you something. So I've relied a lot on going back to the experts when I'm coming into a problem or something, and one, to solve that for my customer, but two, so that I can learn and I can understand and grow a little bit more. So I've been doing that primarily outside of school, but I'm hoping to be able to take some more classes that aerospace is providing. Another thing that way of learning about things through peers is I was fortunate to be able to organize some brown bag talks, brown bag lunch talks, where we had one of our peers from our organization come in every I think 3 months for my organization, but every month we would have one, and they would talk about something that they're doing within the company and a concept maybe. And so that was rewarding, and also an opportunity to learn more.
Thank you, Kyler. Vanessa, you described that you're continually learning like the other members of the panel here. And I know the work that you're doing now has nothing to do with physical chemistry. So tell us about the kinds of things you've had to learn to do this new job role that's been different from your other jobs.
Learning how to listen. Since I do not have the proper skill set for what I am doing, I am actively building it. There's a lot of listening. I am kind of combative by nature. I am argumentative by nature, and that's going to solve nothing. So it's learning how to shut up and listen with both ears. So I take a lot of notes to force myself to listen. A lot of budgeting. So I'm actually going to run over to Tiara's office after this and talk to her, because I am in the process of budgeting, and I am in the process of learning how to do road mapping and all of the program management skills that you need to learn, that are quote unquote soft skills that are at first glance easier than learning how, an atom chews up a carbon surface, but are just as hard because you are now working with people, and people are never simple. And then on the other side of that, I am actively learning about, what is being done on the NASA side for space nuclear power. And that is endlessly fascinating. All of the different technological components, from like storing hydrogen to how you cool a reactor, are just, I could go down that rabbit hole for days and days and days. If anything, that is easier than being a program manager, again, because that is reading and working with nice, calm numbers that have no opinions and are just what they are. And then, as opposed to working with people and trying to figure out what the problems are. And no matter how good of a communicator you are, something always gets lost in translation. So dealing with those problems.
Thank you, Vanessa. I spent about 20% of my Air Force career working on budgeting stuff. And I have to admit, it was a horrible job, but it was the best horrible job that I ever had, because you can't get anything done unless you have the funding to do those activities. Okay, last question I want to pose to the panel. We each probably have been inspired by somebody, had some sort of a mentor or a friend that helped us along our path. So for Con, let me start with you, and I'm just going to go through all the panel members. Share with us somebody who inspired you, who helped you along your career, somebody you look up to.
I guess the person that I would say is a coworker that I had at NASA Goddard, and his name was Dr. Barry Cole, and we were working on the flight project together. So we were going to build 3 flight lasers, and those were his original design. This was for the JEDI project, starting with a G, not a J. And he actually developed this laser called the Homer laser. So lots of character references in this project, but he had been there for a very long time and he knew his stuff inside out. So he was a person I went to and asked questions to, and also became a close personal friend. But he kind of guided me to during my early years of space hardware, as far as like what the processes are and who to talk to and who to touch base with in order to get my questions answered. And since we were also working in the same group, he was really easy to get a hold of, and I never had an opportunity where I couldn't ask him a question. And so having that mentor there that was willing to teach everything they know was very beneficial. And I credit a lot of my, I guess, space hardware experience to him.
Thank you. Tiara, who has been instrumental in guiding you in your career choices?
If I had to pick one person, I would pick my academic advisor in my undergrad, a man named Dr. Chris Walker. He was kind of kooky. He always had the most outlandish ideas. He was the one that led the long duration balloon mission I worked on. Like he always had these ideas like, let's make the balloon the telescope. Let's see if we can figure out a way to reflect the radio waves off the balloon material into the instrument. And somehow he always managed to like get his ideas to work, even if when he drew it on a little piece of paper, you were like, there's no way this is going to work. And so he had such an enthusiasm, but he also was instrumental in getting me through school. You know, he gave me a position as a research assistant in his lab. He got me an internship at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Lab. And the feedback I got after that internship was, she was not prepared for this internship. She didn't have the skills needed. Why did you send her to us? But he kept me around and he kept training me. And you know, when I told him, you know, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish school, I don't have enough money to pay for tuition, he said, let's see if we can find a way to up how much I pay you a little bit. Let's see if there's a little wiggle room to pay you more. And he got it done. And he was always there to give me advice and get me connections with other graduate programs and find me mentors in the research lab. And I would not be where I am today without him. So to answer a previous question, if there's some advice I could give you, find a good academic advisor in college that believes in you and is willing to kind of go to bat for you, because they can absolutely change the course of your life and your career.
Thank you. Vanessa, how about you?
I had to find my mouse, sorry. So earlier we talked about skills, and Tiara just mentioned find somebody, an academic advisor who will help you. The number one thing that helped me along is that I'm very talkative. So at a conference, I met somebody who actually did his undergrad with my PhD advisor. And he works for Aerospace now, and he's why I'm here. He's actually why I'm in New Mexico. So his name's Dr. Russ Cooper. He would not consider himself a mentor to me. He would consider himself a friend. But I met him at a conference in 2013 when I was a graduate student. And he came back and visited in 2018 and really pitched the AFRL to me. And at the time, I was not interested. I was going to Italy. I was going to Germany. That's what I was going to do. I had my life all mapped out. And then he just kind of stayed in touch. And so when I was ready to jump off the initial plan that I had made, I reached out to him, and his response was apply for this fellowship. I'm not with that group anymore. At that time, he had moved over to Aerospace and put me in touch with people. And I wound up getting that fellowship and moved to Albuquerque. And then when I decided that lab work wasn't what I wanted, and I didn't have a good concept of what the possibilities were, because that is 90% of life is knowing what your options are, and I'm not good at dreaming, and so very rarely do I know what the options are. I called him up and sat down and went, hey, what's possible in Albuquerque? Because I like Albuquerque, I wanted to stay. And his response was, well, there's these companies. Well, tell me what it is that you want to do. Oh, that sounds like systems engineering. You should check out Aerospace. He actually shopped my resume around, and then the rest fell out fairly naturally after that point, after a couple months. So yeah, find someone, ask around, and then inevitably you will find somebody who is willing to engage. And I had asked several people at that point, or asked questions of several people at that point, asking them for career advice, asking them how to get from A to B, because you never know how to jump out of an a education once you're in school doing a postdoc or doing your master's, how you jump from that into a job. And I asked around a lot of people, and he was the person who really engaged and was just like, let's sit down, let's talk, let's look at your resume. So keep a hold of those people, thank them constantly. I'm gonna send him a message after this and thank him again. But yeah, so he's definitely been very, very influential in my career.
Thank you. Russ Cooper also works for me, and I will thank him also for encouraging you to come to Aerospace. You have not disappointed us at all. Vance, who has been influential in your career?
I'm sure that it shows a bit that I had kind of a clear breakpoint from biology, and my first job fresh out of college was actually environmental health and safety. Little bit, not really even safety engineering, just kind of knuckle dragging safety, working out in the field, making sure that guys are lockout, tag out, and that oil's not spilled all over the place. There was actually a really a definitive shift, and to tell this story properly, I have to go back to high school really quickly. I was in Science Olympiad. Actually, my high school, I'm really proud of this fact, actually. We took second in the Science Olympiad my senior year. And so we beat out New Mexico, or Socorro High School. And we were that close to beating Academy. Like we were 7 points away from it. And no one beats Academy, by the way, in the state of New Mexico. So I was really proud of that fact. And so I oddly enough, I did astro, I did robotics, I did everything that an engineer would actually do at that time. And I'm working in my professional career. I'm actually starting to kind of come to the realization that maybe it's not really the right thing for me. And they happened just almost out of the blue. I started working with this engineer. He was a master's level. I think he had civil engineering and chemical engineering. And the guy was just amazing. He was an Army Ranger who served in Vietnam before the Vietnam War started. So an older gentleman, but just sharp as a tack. I mean, just absolutely brilliant. And he's literally the one that kind of, we started talking, and I would occasionally I'd bring up stuff from my former life, which was, I was 23, 24. I didn't have that many years under my belt at that point. And he was like, have you ever thought about like being an engineer? It's just applied physics. And from all the stories you've told me of the things that really interested you from your youth, those stand out. So anyway, he took me through a lot. I didn't pass because of him, but he certainly helped me with ordinary differential equations, partial differential equations. He even helped me study for my fundamentals of engineering exam, which was hilarious because the book that he had literally taught you how to code in Fortran. That was what they made. The books that he used for training for passing the engineering exam was based in Fortran, which was a little bit aged at this point. But he was a huge influence on me, kind of vectoring off from more of a pure science to an engineering field. And I'll always owe him. He was just absolutely the best.
Yeah, thanks, Vance. I learned Fortran because that was state-of-the-art programming language when I went to college. So appreciate that. You didn't make me feel ancient.
I was going to say, Mark, I'm feeling a little dated myself.
Yep. Well, you and I can commiserate. Lisa, how about you?
So I kind of have one person who's non-aerospace and one person who's aerospace. And my non-aerospace mentor was my manager at NOAA when I was in operations. And, he described himself as like a frustrated career counselor. Like he wanted to he would go into an interview assessing the person, both like, their personality and whatever, but like also, where they might be the best fit and what they might like to do. So it's like, he was very much like a mutual, like, try to make it the best fit for both parties. And, I don't know, he helped me, like every time I was like, I'm kind of bored, or like, I don't like this, or I want to try something else, he would be like, sure, why don't you go try it over here? Why don't you cross train on this subsystem? Why don't you like, whatever. So I got like a whole, like, I did power, I did thermal, I did ADCS, I did, and then I kind of settled on instruments because I was like, I like this, they're all different. So, he was really helpful for me. And he also was one of the people that helped me get out and go find a new thing to do, which was, he's like, it's part of being a frustrated career counselor, is that like sometimes the best option for the person, the employee, is to like let them go. And then my aerospace manager, she's somebody who I knew kind of while I was working at ops, and I always knew she was aerospace, and she had like seen me apply for a couple of jobs, and she reached out personally, and she's like, are you leaving your current job? Because we'd love to have you at Aerospace. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I'll do the interview. Let's see what this is like. And she's amazing. Her name's Tina Gentry. She's East Coast, like Maryland based. And, even like now our satellite is launching in September. And, I've been kind of talking to her for the last 6 months, like, hey, like I'm looking to do something else because in September, it'll be just about 10 years on JPSS, which is the Joint Polar Satellite System. And so I'm like, okay, 10 years on a mission is a long time. Like I'm ready to try to do something else. And she's been putting me in contact with like these different people at Aerospace who do different stuff, and like setting up meetings with me and like other managers trying to like find me my next thing, like a year in advance, which is really cool. And so like just the fact that she's like invested in my career at Aerospace, invested in me as a person, she knows me really well. And then wants to help find something for me afterwards. It's just like the most personal thing that another person I think like can do. And so, I'm really, really grateful to her. And yeah, so I have something potentially lined up for September, which is exciting.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. Kyler, once again, you get to be the anchor man. So yours will be the last message that you get to leave representative of the whole panel. So who has been inspirational in your career development?
Yeah, so still early in my career, but really kind of bringing me up to get me through my degree was just my family. They were very, very instrumental in kind of instilling values and skills that I needed to be successful. But more recently, within aerospace, I have a mentor, Lisa Berenberg, who has been through it and worked in for the similar programs that I'm currently working for, has history and experience. So I've been meeting with her fairly often, and she always has an answer or an idea for something for me to look at next, or some way to solve a problem. And it goes further than that, because she likes to push the boundary away from work too, and ensure like, oh, how's your life going outside of work? Do you have good work-life balance? Are you enjoying what you're doing? Things like that. And so just someone that I can really talk to and get support in any way that I need. So I've been very thankful for her.
Thank you, Kyler. And with that, I'd like to thank all the members of the panel. I appreciate you sharing your stories, your experiences, and your advice. And hopefully we can inspire young people to enter into the STEM career fields. Karen, thank you for the opportunity for letting Aerospace share with you some of our fantastic scientists and engineers. And so I appreciate the opportunity that you gave to us.